everyone, my name is Langerman. I'm a violinist in New York City and I'm also a violin teacher. Today we're practicing octaves and I'm going to show you 5 progressive exercises you can do to practice octaves and get them as in tune as possible. So the first exercise we're going to do is setting the octave. When you're first starting out learning octaves, you want to identify what your hand frame is in each position. So today we're just going to probably focus on the first 3 positions. We'll practice first setting the octave from the open G. This way you get your hand really organized, and what you want to pay attention to is try to keep the flat wrist. Try to keep a straight wrist so that you're not going like this or too much like this. Try to keep it neutral. Let's do this one more time. Now let's do it from the note A, first finger, same thing. So we're doing whole steps and then we're doing a half step with the 3rd and 4th finger. Okay, and you can do this in different parts. We can even go chromatically, so let's do A flat. And so on, okay? Do it on different strings, different positions, change it up a little bit each day. Let's go to the second exercise now. The second exercise we're going to do are broken octaves. We're going to play the lower string and then the upper string, and then separately first in a slur, and then together. When you do this, try to put both fingers together. If you need to, as a really preliminary step, you can go, imagine you're setting the octave. So you can imagine what we did in the first exercise, going like this. But try to set right away. The reason for that is because you want to train your fingers to go into the correct spots. Okay, so the third exercise we're going to do, instead of broken octaves like we just did, we're going to play only one string at a time. So we're going to practice the shift from the first finger. For example, let's take E and F sharp. So when you do this, you're going to keep both the pinky and first finger down, and you're going to shift them together. What we're focusing on here is the intonation of one finger at a time. And also we're paying attention to how we shift, because you want to go back and remember the fundamentals of shifting. So you release a little bit of finger pressure, go up, and then set the finger back down. And we'll try it with just the first finger. And back. Practice this under a slur. So I'm still shifting with 4 also. I'm not worrying about it right now. And now we're going to switch. We're going to do just the pinky note, E and F sharp. So focusing on the fundamentals of shifting when we practiced it with only one finger. And then you can try it together. And if you get it a little bit off, don't try to adjust it, really listen. And try to figure out which finger needs to be adjusted. One thing that helps is to lead more with the first finger, because the first finger and the thumb, they kind of set the position, the hand position. The pinky, try to keep it a little bit relaxed. So that one wasn't good, so I'm gonna sit on it. Pinky needs to be higher. So I'm gonna go back. Try that again. So you repeat just that every time. Okay, again, pinky needs to be higher. I have to remind myself. First finger. That's the method of practicing. So instead of adjusting, you listen and identify which finger needs to change and whether it has to be sharper or flatter than where you put it. So let's go to the fourth exercise. We're going to go back to the broken octaves, but this time we're going to switch it up a little bit. And I'm starting from the top. Or you could do different notes. The reason we're switching it up like that is so you first listen to the shift on one finger, and then the second time you listen to the shift on the other finger, going both up and down. Okay, let's go to the next one, exercise number 5. So now we're going to do different rhythms, going back and forth. So here's one that I really like. The reason I like this one is it helps you practice landing on the new octave in a certain amount of time. This is kind of a good exercise to do before you start adding the metronome. You can add that later and practice it the way you would practice your scales normally. When we finally play it in time, in a certain time, whether it's in a piece or in a scale, this kind of rhythm helps practice shifting at a certain speed, because in reality we're never going to be shifting really slowly like this, right? In a piece we're probably going to be shifting pretty quickly. So once you get to this step, and even when you do it this way, I'm paying attention, pay attention to whether you are releasing and shifting with the correct method: release, slide, and set. Okay, I don't want to say press. We never want to press because that introduces extra tension. Okay, so I always want to, especially the first finger, make sure you're not putting extra pressure on that. You want it to be just enough to make a good sound. So as you're practicing octaves, no matter where you are in the stage, whether you're starting or you're just practicing your fundamentals, warming up, returning to fix old habits or create new habits, better habits, keep these 3 things in mind during your process. Number 1, be really patient with yourself. This is something that takes a very, very long time to get good at. For some longer than others, and everybody has their own unique timeline for anything, for any technical or musical aspect on their journey. You want to be very patient about it, and you also want to create a plan when you practice. So depending on where you are, it might make sense to focus on one day simply connecting two octaves. Just spend 5 to 10 minutes just working on those two octaves alone. If you're doing something else, depending on your goal, of course, for another day you might want to try a whole scale, or one day you might want to just practice on two strings and one day you want to practice crossing over from one string to the next. The second tip, very important. This is a mistake that many people make when they're practicing, and I've made this mistake so many times, and I want to share with you so that you don't make this mistake when you're practicing. It's very easy to start making micro adjustments. So for example, you're practicing going from one octave to the next and it's out of tune. For example, this, right? So what many people do is right away they start adjusting their fingers. And I don't recommend practicing it this way, because if you practice it this way, what you're teaching your hands how to do is you're teaching them how to land. One, you're teaching how to land incorrectly, and two, you're teaching how to adjust. And that's exactly what's going to happen as a result. You're going to get used to doing that a lot. But instead, what I recommend that you do is, if you land on an octave and it doesn't sound like the way you want, sit on it, listen to it, and try to identify which note, which finger is out of tune, or which finger is more out of tune, and whether it's too sharp or too flat. Okay, this can take a long time, and so once again, be patient. And this can take many years, or it could take a few months, depends on you. It's a really individual process, and everybody's timeline is different, like I said before. The next tip I have is with the bow. This is a bow thing. When you play octaves, remember that one string that you're playing on is thicker than the other. So when it comes to bow weight distribution, instead of putting 50% of the weight on each string, 50-50, try to make it more like 60-40. So put a little bit more bow weight on the lower string and a little bit less on the upper string, because that way you get the best sound quality possible. Also, if you do the opposite, if you accidentally put too much bow weight on the upper string, you might end up having too much bow weight on it. And that can actually affect intonation, believe it or not. So I try to actually balance it so that the lower octave's a little bit louder than the upper octave, and it's gonna help with be more in tune. Versus, you hear how this time I put more weight on the D string than G, so it didn't sound quite as good. That's too much pressure on D string, so you want to do the opposite. You want to put more weight on. So the upper string sounds a little softer, but actually in the end it sounds more balanced. Okay, so these are the 5 exercises that I recommend doing for octaves. I hope they are helpful. Let me know if you have any questions. Put them in the comments below. If you have other exercises for octaves that you really like, I'm really interested. Alright, and I'll see you in the next video.